Hello everyone, my name is Kyla and today I am going to be discussing business interactions between Korea and the US. So one thing that I want to know before I go ahead and get started presenting is that when I say that I am talking about Korea, I am mostly going to be talking about South Korea. South Korea is the country that the US mostly does its interactions with, and I have mostly just been researching South Korea. North Korea is considered more of a hostile country, and the US does not really do any interactions with them currently. So the topics that I'm going to be discussing are on the context of culture, business ethics, business etiquette, professional socializing, food and eating, customs, the main language, currency and exchange of payment for goods and services, safety and travel expectations, and sightseeing. So the first topic that I am going to be delving into is the context of culture. So Korea is a very high context country, and they don't use social media or mobile networking very often. They mostly only use their social media and mobile networking with close family and friends, and it is not usually used between businesses or in a professional setting that is just for personal use. They only usually do business with those who they highly find trustworthy, and it is usually the easiest way to be able to do business with Korea is to gain Korea's trust. They value loyalty and they value honesty as well. If you are loyal to them, then they are likely to be business partners with you for as long as you want to be business partners with them. They also have a hierarchy system in Korea that is still very prominent even today. One important thing to note about the hierarchy system is that the two main parts that create a diversity between Koreans is their social status and their age. So if you are of a family that has a higher social status, then you are likely to be in a more of a head or higher up position than somebody who comes from a lower status family, and also the age creates a barrier of respect. So you are expected to have very high respect for people that are much older than you, and people that are younger than you are expected to have a higher respect for you. The next topic that I'm going to cover is business ethics. So one thing to note is that gift giving is a very big thing in Korea. If you go to someone's house, then you are expected to bring a gift with you, but you do not want the gift to be very expensive. The thing is that in Korea, gift reciprocating is a very big thing. If you are given a gift, it is very often that Koreans will feel obligated that they have to give you a gift back if you gave them one. So if your gift is highly expensive, they may not be able to return the gift. So that is one reason why you do not give expensive gifts. Give practical gifts and ones that seem kind but do not seem like you are suggesting anything. Their government system is a presidential system, and they have a legislative and a judicial branch, very similar to how the US does, and they elect a president every term and the people get to vote, so it is actually a very similar thing to how the US does things. The next thing that I want to say is that bowing is an extremely important part of how they show respect to those around them. If you meet someone, the first thing that you will do is greet them by their name, and you will bow. And if you're younger than them, then you are expected to bow first, and you're expected to bow very deeply depending on how much respect. So the deeper the bow is, the higher respect you have for that person. The next topic I am going to be discussing is business etiquette. So when you are going to a business meeting in Korea, you're going to want to dress conservatively and formally. If you are a lady, then you should be wearing a dress or a skirt and wearing minimal amount of jewelry, and men should wear a suit and a tie. The colors should be muted and not too eye-catchy. You will want to make sure that when you're addressing someone, you know their correct title. If you do not know their correct title, that is considered a very rude thing, and you probably will not be viewed with the same professional respect as you would be if you know everyone's correct titles and address them properly. Only the head is allowed to negotiate, to ask questions, and make decisions for the company. And generally, when the Koreans are making their business interactions, the two heads are going to be the ones mainly discussing everything, and they may even do that outside of the meeting itself, considering that it's just between the two of them. Business cards are considered a must in Korea, but one important thing to note is that when you're giving someone or receiving a business card, there's a very specific manner with which that you are supposed to give and receive them. You make sure that when you give with two hands with the business card facing forward and up front and facing them, and that when you receive, you also receive with two hands. If you don't do so, then that is considered to also be disrespectful and not professional. You will always want to be punctual and on time to business meetings. Tardiness is not acceptable at all in Korea, so always be on time or early. The next thing I will discuss is business transactions. So when you're doing a transaction between Korea, you do not want to be pushy. You will want to make sure that you state all of the information, all the facts, all the possibilities. Koreans will feel like they are more likely to be able to trust you if they know that you are giving them all of the information. You do not want to give in easily. Koreans find that people who do not give in easily are to be admirable people, both in their culture and in outside cultures. So they will find you to be a person that they will want to do business with if you do not give in too easily. You also want to be in control of your emotions. Your emotions will come across very unprofessional, whether you are very excited or very upset or mad. Any outburst of emotion could easily make it so that they will not want to do any business transaction between you and the company that you come from. So another important topic that I'm going to be discussing is relevant diversity issues. So about 50% of the population of Korea do not have an affiliated religion, and men tend to be dominant in the workplace rather than women and men being viewed as equal. It is becoming more common that women are able to take on the same roles as men, but in many business situations, women are still going to be viewed as lesser than men, and the men will be viewed as dominant. Interactions will depend heavily on the social status and the age of whom you are interacting with, and this has a lot to do with the hierarchy system that I mentioned earlier. The democratic system has been in charge for the last 7 years, which is quite a long time. Little legal protection is given against discrimination currently in Korea, and that is kind of a big problem because if you go to Korea and you visit and you feel that someone is discriminating you, there is not much that the government or anyone can really do about that. So that is quite a large problem currently in Korea. Professional socializing is the next topic I will be touching on. When you are greeting someone, you will start with the greeting, then you will do your bow, and then there will be a handshake. Personal and business relationships are highly intertwined. If you are to have a good relationship with the people you are doing business with, you will want to know a lot about their personal life, like their family and hobbies and things that they find interesting. If you have a good personal relationship with that person, it's highly likely you will also have a good business relationship with them. Swearing is not acceptable. Drinking is acceptable, though, in business settings, especially if you offer to drink. It is considered rude to refuse the drink. The host is also the one who will pay for the meal. If you offer to pay and there was a host other than you that was hosting the meal, then it would be rude for you to offer to pay for the meal. Do not even ask. That will be considered very rude. Another important topic that I will be touching on is food choices and eating customs. Many meals consist of vegetables, meat, and eggs. And in my presentation, I did include some of the pictures of some of the meals that people eat commonly. Shoes are required to be taken off when you're eating a meal, so make sure that you don't have stinky socks or anything if you're going to be sharing a meal professionally. Do not use your fingers ever when you are eating. And another important thing that I should make note is that there are a lot of rules surrounding what you do and don't do with your chopsticks. Do not poke your food with your chopsticks, and do not point with your chopsticks. There will be no elbows at the table, and you want to pay very close attention to who is the senior at the table, because when they rise and when they sit, you will want to follow what they do. So if they rise, then you rise. If they sit, then you will sit. The next topic I will be discussing is the main language. The main language in Korea is Korean, but South and North Korea do have slightly different languages that they speak, but they are both Korean languages. Korea is also known to show some discrimination towards foreigners and people who do not know their language very well. And like I mentioned earlier, there is not much that can be done legally to protect people against discrimination. So that is why discrimination can be a problem in Korea. If you are visiting Korea, it is not required or necessary to hire a translator. It will depend on a lot of circumstances, like how much English the people that you are meeting know and how much Korean that you know. In some situations, it might be wise to hire a translator, and in other situations, you probably will not need to. It will not be necessary at all. The next topic I will be discussing is currency and exchange of payment. $1 is worth 1,236.7113 South Korean wons. The won in South Korea is considered to be the most reliable currency. If you were to take a US dollar to Korea, it might be accepted some places, but there is not 100% guarantee that if something is to happen that you would be able to get your money back. Visa and MasterCard are accepted almost everywhere, including in hotels, restaurants, and shops. So if you took your Visa or MasterCard, there is a very high chance that you would be able to use it pretty much everywhere. Tipping is acceptable, but not expected in Korea currently. It is becoming a more widely done thing, but is still not as popular places like here in the US. So that's something very important to note, that if you tip, it might come off as a bit unusual, but it will not be viewed as rude like in places like Japan, where it is viewed as rude. Another important topic that I'm going to discuss is the safety and travel expectations that you will want to have. So you will have to have a negative test 48 hours before your trip. Common transportation uses are cars, taxi, public transportation systems like buses, rails, and you can take boats across the sea. Crime is common in Korea, and there is currently a war going on between North and South Korea, like I mentioned earlier, so that is something that you will want to be aware of if you are visiting. There are also some natural disasters that are highly common in Korea, such as earthquakes, tsunamis, and typhoons. And depending on where you were staying, there will be different things that they might tell you to do. If you are very close to the water, you'll want to be very highly aware of tsunamis. And where you are staying, they will likely give you directions on what to do if one of these events takes place. My last and my final topic that I will be discussing with you is sightseeing and culture events that take place in Korea. Some of the most common sightseeing places to go and visit are temples and historic locations. There is actually an important place where they grow all of their tea, and many people like to go and visit and learn about the tea culture and practices and how they grow and where they grow all of their tea in Korea. There also are many beautiful gardens that people like to go and visit, and temples that hold very important religious beliefs to the people who live in Korea and used to live in Korea. The biggest cultural event that takes place once a year for 2 weeks at a time is the Korean Mud Festival. This takes place, like I said, for 2 weeks, and there are many people that like to go and visit South Korea at the time from all over the world. Millions of people will travel to Korea to take place. The mud is said to have very good benefits for the skin and beautifying effects. So people love to go and travel to Korea during the 2-week Mud Festival. I really hope that you enjoyed and that you learned something from this presentation, and I hope that you all have a very good rest of your day.